Information Station 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 5 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. You know, I've been doing this radio show, and I've been in radio in this town for so long now. I've come to know some of you, and I've known some of your wives and husbands, and every now and then I'll get a call that one of you has lost one of your spouses, and it is always heartbreaking, especially, I mean, for the most part, I mean, the folks that have called in to tell me that were longtime listeners who had been married a very, very long time, and it's just so heartbreaking to know that somebody that is the most important person in your life is no longer in your life. My own parents were married from the day they were, I don't know how old they were when they got married, I suppose early 20s or something. And they lived there, they did the death till do us part, whatever that thing is. And I mean, they were married until my dad died, and then my mom passed away 4 years later. I put together, as most of you know, I do music, and in the 1970s, my dad asked me to write a song for their anniversary that year, and it was going to be a surprise for my mom. And so I wrote this song about the fact that they had been together, that they never had much money, but they had lots of fun. The times weren't always easy, but he was expressing through my words that he was glad that she was the one who was there through those hard times, etc. And you know, when they ended up retiring and moving here to Florida, which is ultimately how I ended up here, I mean, truly, they had gone through everything any couple ever goes through. Probably, I'm guessing they went through everything. My own marriage lasted 9 years. I am sure that I'm probably to blame for that. I had so many different. With the music simply being away from home a lot probably was a big contributor. Dr. Linda Carroll has a book called Love Cycles, The 5 Essential Stages of Lasting Love, and there's a paradox in some of the book. I haven't received the books, but I've read the preparation material so that I could do the interview. And one of the paradoxes is that sometimes those hard parts, the challenging parts, are part of the intimacy that binds two people together. And I think I get that, actually. I just never had it pointed out to me before. Dr. Linda Carroll is a licensed psychotherapist. She's certified in transpersonal psychology, and if this is printed correctly, imago therapy, or maybe that's supposed to be image therapy, certified in the Hot Monogamy program. She's a master teacher in pairs therapy, obviously a proponent of once you get married, staying married. Love Cycles, The 5 Essential Stages of Lasting Love is the title of the book. Dr. Linda Carroll, good morning, doctor.
Hi. Hi, Larry.
How are you?
Good. I'm in Oregon. It's early this morning. It's 7 o'clock.
Well, thank you for getting up early to do this.
Yeah.
Now, normally I do the show with Robin. Robin is a lady. She's with her husband. They just passed the 40-year mark, by the way.
Oh my gosh!
They just passed 40 years of marriage, so they're hanging in there. The one thing I wanted to mention is that when I posted the song that I just told you about the other day, and I just put a little slideshow together. I was thinking about my mom and dad, and I put the song with old pictures. It was amazing how many people were responding to it. Normally I get like nobody says anything about anything I post.
Yeah.
But everybody was responding to it, and I think it strikes a chord because whether you were divorced or not, in my case I was, I think we all want that or have wanted it at one time.
I think, well, what we want is we want to feel like we're not so alone in the world. And when you have a long-term relationship, you've got another person who shares your life. You know, I used to be a hospice worker, and I remember when something really profound that stood out, that when a partner lost their partner, and they said this over and over again, it wasn't the big times of the year or celebrations or the more dramatic experiences of life that made them miss their partner. It was the little things. It was like, who cares if I went to the dentist? But my partner will ask me, "Did you go to the dentist?" It was the small things that make up our life. To have somebody share those things that was so wonderful. But I think that I don't really think that when you get married you have to stay married. That's not exactly true. I think if you select the person correctly at the beginning, if you have the ability to find somebody who's good for you from the get-go, then there's a lot of things you can do to keep that relationship alive. But sometimes we do have to leave a relationship, as painful as it is, because we didn't know what we were doing at the beginning. We were absolutely struck under the glow of the merge. And so I think that, for some people, and in your situation, I think it's so important that if you have a relationship and whatever it is, like in your case it was work, that becomes something that separates you, that you still can use that relationship as a way for practicing what I call the promise realized, which is wholehearted love. I think we're here to learn to love, if that's the only thing I can figure out. And we can learn to love in a lot of different ways. And sometimes when people don't make it, and I think it's so important they don't feel like failures, but that they use that painful experience as a way to grow themselves as well as the people that can make it for the distance.
Oh wow! Gosh, there were so many things how I want to respond to that. I do want to respond to some of the things you said, but I want to ask you this: was the book written for the newlywed, or
no,
or for the person who's going through the 7-year itch, or who?
No, I think, it depends on the newlywed. Newlyweds are smarter than they used to be in a way, because they know that first feeling is something that's created by lots of chemicals, and it probably it's not going to last the same way. But I think the book is for anybody that's interested in love, whether they're single, whether they're divorced, whether they're widowed, or whether they're in a long-term relationship, because it is full of the stages of love. It talks about the essential stages it's not just the stages of love. The stages I talk about in relationship, they're true with all of our relationships, our friendships, our siblings, people we care about. That we start with this great glow and this excitement, and it's all wonderful, and then we hit some rough bumps, and I describe why and what those are, and one of the things that happens when we do if we work the skills, because one of the things I say is that falling in love is a feeling, it's a sentiment, but a long-term relationship is a skill set. And I think that there's a way that, many people of your parents' generation didn't have the same expectations that we have now. We want a soulmate. We want to feel in 25 years with a person like we did the first 6 months.
Are we expecting too much with that?
Yeah. Well, we want it for free. We want to just happen.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I've often wondered about the cultures that have the prearranged marriages. The mom and dad decided you're going to marry one of the children before either of you was even born.
Yeah.
And they're with each other, and I'm sure that each couple has a different story. So I'm not trying to say there's a blanket statement that would apply in any way, but I just read a report on that. Okay.
It's really interesting. And the report said that often, and again, you can't make a blanket statement, but often that one of the reasons that an arranged marriage, for instance, can turn out so well, and it doesn't always, and sometimes it's terrible, but when it does, is because the people go into it knowing they have to work at it. They go into it and they know that they're not going to walk into, wherever they go to get married, and the elephant's going to bring them in, which happens in Hindu marriages, and they're going to go off into La La Land for the rest of their life.
Yeah,
they know they might not even like each other at the beginning, and that there's work ahead. But we have this culture that is so addicted to this idea of soulmates and easy love that if we don't feel the same way about our partner all the time, if we have those seasons of difficulty, we think something's wrong. And a lot of times it's not that there's something wrong, it's just that we're in an October or even a winter, and that there are things that we can do to get through that if we know how to do it.
Dr. Linda Carroll is our guest. Her book is called Love Cycles, the 5 Essential Stages of Lasting Love. Gosh, I have so many questions. We need to take a little break, and we'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. Sunny to partly cloudy today. A nice day with highs of 84 to 86. Patchy clouds tonight, low 63 to 68. Sun mixing with clouds tomorrow and Thursday. Highs on both days will be between 83 and 87 degrees. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm Heather Zayer.
This is James Snyder inviting you to join me each Sunday morning at 9:30 for Sunday Joy, right here on WOCA 1370.
Veterans are the foundation upon which our freedom is built. Listen to The Source, WOCA, each Thursday at 9 a.m. to Veterans News with Hank Whittier from Vets Helping Vets. You'll hear tributes, information on veterans issues, and stories that will make you laugh, cry, and feel proud. Veterans News always focuses on the military, past and present, and on our first responders. Veterans News is brought to you each week by Bob Wine's Camellia Gardens and Nursery, keeping you blooming since 1952. All right, 16 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for listening this Tuesday morning. Linda Carroll just told me not to, well, she didn't tell me not to call her doctor, but she's not a doctor. But she's a licensed psychotherapist. I'm a little bit confused by that. So nobody calls you doctor?
No, because I don't have a doctorate. I have a master's degree.
Oh, okay. I want to ask you a little bit. Obviously, you've got the credentials to ask this. When we read articles like in Cosmopolitan or in Playboy magazine, and magazine, I'm trying to think one that attracts women and one that attracts men. They often give us advice that I think is not absolutely accurate. They'll tell women, you got to be very sexual with the man. That's going to keep them there. And I always think, maybe we're simple, but I think we're a little bit more complex than that. And they always tell the man, you got to take the long walks on the beach. You got to bring the flowers. And I always think, there's got to be more to it than that the other direction too. What do you think the pop culture sends us these messages? Is that part of the problem?
Yes, but here's what's right about those messages. Not all of them blanketly, but here's what something important about those messages. Men and women are so different, and one of the problems we have with our partners is thinking they're us. And that's, I call that in the book. I do have a chapter in the book called Sexual Cycles, by the way, that goes through a whole lot of different seasons that couples go through sexually. It's not just one way. But I think that part of the advice is trying to keep people in that first stage all the time. Like how to be in Disneyland in love. And sometimes it's not Disneyland. Sometimes it's just hard, or sometimes it's boring. Sometimes there are seasons that are just kind of gray, and that's okay. And I think that what a lot of them are getting at is, we know that men and women have very different brains. Our brains work differently. Our libidos work differently. Men have about 10 times more testosterone than women. Not always, but most of the time. So men think about sex more than women. You know what? The number one fear of women is disconnection. That more than anything else, it is that when their partner doesn't want to connect or talk, they fear disconnection. What men fear is they fear being criticized or being seen as incompetent. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the way that for most women, love is expressed through emotion, through flowers or walks on the beach, just like what some of those corny articles may say, and there certainly can be pretty limited, but that they're trying to get at something that's inherent. Whereas for men, sexually, one of the things I say in my chapter on sexual cycles is that for a lot of men, they're like light bulbs. They're just switched on. Women are like slow irons. How do we work with the differences between us? We have to accept that our... Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry, but if it's true, then that means to please a man takes 20 minutes. To please a woman, it takes a whole production.
Well, there is some truth in that.
Okay.
But there's some truth in that. It's a little more complicated than that, and it's not true for all people, of course. And I think that one of the things that some of those articles do get to is that we should always be in this state, which I call stage one, the romantic or the merge. We should be in that state all the time. We're not going to be in that state all the time. It doesn't mean something's wrong. But here's the deal. We can get stuck. We can get stuck into a long season of of gloom in a relationship, or when the relationship goes into some hard, stressful times, we can come out of that if we don't make messes during that time. And that's the problem that people have. We fall in love, and the relationship is stress-free. The stresses are on the outside of the relationship. The relationship is a safe place to be. Oh, when I'm with you, I feel so wonderful. And then what happens is we join our lives, we join our bank account, we may get a dog, have a child, take each other's parents into our houses, whatever it is that happens, and suddenly the relationship is full of stress. And so a lot of people who come to counseling, for example, they come into counseling when they're under stress, and they say we have problems communicating. Well, they're very good communicators. They tell me what's going on in great ways.
Can I ask you a question about today versus 20 years ago and more? In the cycles of our love, we never used to have this thing called Facebook or social media where all of a sudden there's a girlfriend that we had 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Normally, you wouldn't have even bumped into her, thought about her even, or boyfriend, could be either or. But all of a sudden there's this person, and you say, wow, we had a flame at one time.
Yeah.
She's not the one I married, or he's not the one I married, but there was this flame. Does that bring something new to relationships that we didn't have 20 years ago or more?
Yes, it does. I think people have always had fantasies about those old relationships, and certainly people have always had affairs. But what's new is that it's so accessible. It's so easy. You can just put the name in, Fred Jones, and there he is. He pops up on Facebook after 40 years. And I think that really creates a stress because it's a fantasy. What it does is it's like, if I were with this person, I wouldn't have trouble. And especially when you leave a relationship in some of the sweetest parts of it, which people often do, when they leave school and they leave the first person they fell in love with, they can always think, well, if I had been with this person, it would just have stayed as great as it was on graduation.
Yeah, right.
And it's not true, of course. There would have been other trouble, but I think it does bring another stress because it's accessible and it starts out as anonymous. You can just put a person's name in and they show up. No one knows you've done it. You can convince yourself it's not dangerous. And one of the things, I actually say this in Love Cycles, I say, if you think about your high school boyfriend, that's not dangerous. But when you start to Google them, you've gone over a line.
Oh, really? So the friendship part, you don't agree with? You can't be friends with somebody?
I don't.
It's hard.
I think it's tricky. I think here's one line that I would say is a definite line, is if it's a secret. If you say to your partner, "Hey, I just looked up so and so," and your partner says, "Oh, whatever happened to her," and you're in it together, that's one thing. But if you start creating a secret life, when you're writing to someone and your partner's not in it, that's danger. That's trouble.
It is really something relatively new, I guess. I can't remember when Facebook started becoming a part of our lives, but Linda Carroll is our guest. Love Cycles, The 5 Essential Stages of Lasting Love is the book. How long has the book been out?
The book has been out since September 15th.
Wow, that's not that long. Have you had enough feedback to tell me? Are you getting feedback from people, and is the feedback different depending on the age of the person writing you?
You know what? I've got 41 5-stars on Amazon.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? We have a quiz. I'm getting lots of feedback. And we have a free quiz people can take to see where they are in the cycles of love. And people seem to love that quiz. We've had thousands of people take that quiz and just get a sense of how the cycles work. And I've had lots of emails from people saying, I'm so glad to know we're normal. I'm so glad to know that there are things I can do to get out of this stuck place. And I've had wonderful letters from people. It's been really satisfying.
Really good. Linda, we have the phone lines open, and I'm getting some calls. You want to take some of them?
I'd love to.
All right, let's go to the phone. Thank you for calling. You're on the air now with Linda Carroll. Thank you for waiting, too.
Good morning, Larry and Linda. Listen, I had a beautiful wife for 43 years, and I lost her, but it took me quite a few years to learn these 3 things that made our marriage last 2 years. First of all, it took me a while. I learned to hold her hand and just say a short prayer. And then I learned, it took me quite a few years to learn all this, but then I learned to watch my words. I mean, I would think before I speak to her, and I would try to always lift her up and never put her down. And if I wanted to try to say something in a roundabout way where it would not hurt her feelings, but try to lift her up. And then the last thing I found out was, first of all, the two things. The man always wants to be satisfied sexually, but I learned over a period of time to try to make her happy. And then I made a mental list in my mind of the little bitty things she liked, like the day she died.
So you've done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
He's talking about three important things: the importance of touch and acknowledging the other person, the importance of appreciation, and the importance of showing caring behaviors to express what it is that she likes through her eyes. And if you think flowers are dumb, but she loves flowers, then that's something that you can do that can bring a lot of joy to your partner.
Yeah.
So he stumbled on those things, and those are sure a cornerstone, is giving our partner appreciation, and the way they feel appreciation is not the way we feel it.
It is hard. And as I mentioned in the intro, I've done this for so long that some of the listeners, he included, I've known, and then I remember when his wife passed away. And there's so many of the people who listen that I've come to know over the years that have had that story. Do you know what?
Because we all leave each other, and we think it'll go on forever,
yeah.
but it doesn't.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can help us be appreciative of the moment that we're in with that person.
All right, to lighten it up just a little bit, I got to ask you about Viagra. Because
okay, ask me.
I want to because the commercials will say improve your sex drive. Well, I'm always under the impression that, don't get me wrong, I'm fine with sex, but I'm thinking, well, as we get older, maybe we're supposed to start to not want it as much.
Isn't that's a fascinating thing you just said. You know what? I think that there's something about that that's true. I mean, you can't make a statement that one thing is true for all people.
Yeah.
But I think it depends, I think that but one of the things about Viagra is that the commercials, that there's no one more beautiful than the people in the Viagra commercials. and that continues the whole myth about aging, doesn't it? That somehow if we're aging,
well, yeah.
But what's interesting is that the best sex, for women at least, is reported I think it's under 45 and over 65. That I know so many older couples. Yes, I know. There's a story in my book about a woman 92 years old. It's an incredible story, Larry. And she was married for 60-something years, and her marriage was terrible. And the last 3 years, one day she said to her husband, and they were like in their late 80s, she said, "Let's bury the hatchet." And he agreed. And they started to have a sexual relationship.
Oh, wow.
It was really wonderful.
That's awesome.
And after 3 years, he died. And she said,
I bet.
I miss his body. Isn't that amazing?
Oh, he misses
so we don't
his
know. I don't like to say something is really bad or good in terms of Viagra, but I think that people can find their way to a sweet sexual relationship in so many different ways than how we think of what sex is.
I think I think, Len, I was commenting more on the commercial than the product itself. I just think that the commercial makes it seem like if you're not interested, then there must be something wrong, and here's a pill to fix it.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that statistically, and I've seen this in my practice, that it's men who stop sex more than women. Because when you get to be a certain age, things don't work the same as they used to. And for a lot of men, this is so embarrassing. They don't want to talk about it. They just cut themselves off sexually. So isn't that interesting?
Linda, you've been a great guest. I feel like I keep cutting you off. I don't mean to do that. I need to, because we've only got a minute left. How do we get the book? We need to find that out.
Amazon.com. There's a free quiz on lovecycles.org, and you can take the quiz and see where you are. Barnes & Noble, you can go anywhere in your local bookstore, ask for it, Love Cycles, The 5 Essential Stages of Lasting Love.
All right, lovecycles.org. The book, again, is Love Cycles, The 5 Essential Stages of Lasting Love. Linda, Carroll, thank you so much for being on the air with us today.
Thanks, Larry.
I kind of wish Robin had been here. She would have had so many insightful things to say from a woman's
so much fun
perspective.
To talk to her.
Yeah.
We could do it again. Thanks so much.
I hope you do it again. Thank you, Linda.
Bye-bye.
We will take a little break, and we'll be right back.
News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. More healthcare workers are needed. That's what the head of the World Bank says about dealing with the West Africa Ebola crisis. U.S. Ambassador